Hello, Ceredo Museum, friends of Ceredo Museum, and everybody interested in local Ceredo and Canova history. My name is Matt Perry. I am the history teacher, sixth grade history teacher at Ceredo Canova Middle School. Tell you a little bit about myself. Grew up in Ceredo. I've lived in the Ceredo Canova area my entire life. Have a master's degree in history. My first book actually was about Ceredo and the 5th West Virginia Volunteer Infantry, which was stationed in Ceredo. You can actually pick that book up, and all proceeds go to the Ceredo Museum. So when the Ceredo Museum finally gets to open back up during this coronavirus issue, head in there on Tuesdays and Fridays, pick up a copy of my book. All the proceeds go directly to the Ceredo Museum. My book is also available at the Ramsdale House, another great treasure of the Ceredo Canova area. And again, I get nothing out of that. It all goes directly to the great people at the Ramsdale House who have done a fantastic job refurbishing and fixing up the Ramsdale House. It looks spectacular. So I was asked by my buddy Cody, who works hand in hand with people in the Ceredo Historical Society, to do a video. All of our institutions are shut down right now, and we're trying to find ways to connect to each other still. And the historical community, we're struggling with that. Museums are closed, our historical sites are closed. Even though it's a little bit easier now in 2020, I can do historical research online, it's just not the same right now. So we thought it would be cool to do a little bit of like a video story of Ceredo. Now, there's no way I could do the entire history of Ceredo justice in this short video. So I just thought it would be cool to give a little overview. And you're going to have to excuse my office, which is outdoors, my side porch. Again, no office to go into, so you get the beautiful back porch view of Canova and some rain in the background. So hopefully it doesn't distract you too much. So people have asked me, I've been interviewed on television, I've been interviewed by multiple filmmakers, local filmmakers, about Ceredo and about the area and why it is so important. There's a reason that I felt so strongly about my hometown that my first book that I ever wrote was about Ceredo. It has such a cool and unique story. Ceredo is special. Ceredo is special, and there's no doubt about it. You see, in the antebellum period, which is the era before the Civil War, we were part of Virginia. There was no West Virginia. And Ceredo, if you're unfamiliar with our geography, we are right on the confluence where the Ohio and the Big Sandy Rivers meet, and we are at the border of Kentucky and Ohio. So at the time, we were on the border of Kentucky, Ohio, and Virginia. So we were, if you go to the west, you would have a state where slavery was allowed in Kentucky. You were in a slaveholding state in Virginia. But then, if you cross the Ohio River, you're in free territory. And so, a man by the name of Eli Thayer, who was a Republican congressman from Massachusetts, he comes down in a Conestoga wagon, and he brings a group of people. Now, I could get very long-winded about Thayer. It was a economic opportunity for Thayer. This was not the only town that he created like this. He created a town in Kansas that had the same goals as Ceredo. So he sees this little area on the map that was undeveloped, right where 12 Pole Creek dumps into the Ohio River, and he buys that territory. And he brings many people from the north in to settle in the town that they call Ceredo, which is named after the Greek goddess of wheat and grain, Ceres. It might be Roman. If I'm mistaken, I'm sorry. Can't be perfect. So, we have this town that's named after this goddess of wheat and grain. And his goal, and the goal of the people of Ceredo, is to make Ceredo a bastion of abolitionism in a slaveholding state. There was no slavery allowed in Ceredo. They were a free community. They encouraged African Americans to come to Ceredo, and it eventually would become a stop on the Underground Railroad. Now, the great people at the Ramsdale House and people at the Historical Society can tell you more in depth about the Underground Railroad activities, but it makes perfect sense because under the cover of darkness, this would be one of the last stops for many escaping African American slaves. All they had to do was get across the Ohio River. Yeah, it's a big feat in 1860 and 1859 and all the time before the Civil War. It's not like you could just take a jet ski across there, but all they had to do was get across that water, and they were free. So Ceredo becomes not just a community, it is a light of opportunity. Ceredo is a light of opportunity in the darkness that was the slaveholding South. Ceredo was not popular with her neighbors. Ceredo is in Wayne County, West Virginia, and it was the only place in Wayne County, West Virginia that was anti-slavery. They were constantly on guard by thinking about people were going to raid the town, and that eventually does happen later in its history. Ceredo stood for what was right. And I think that's what makes me so proud to be from this area. You know, even when it was just easy to just live in Virginia, all right, whatever. Even if you didn't care for slavery, you didn't rock the boat, that's fine. But the people of Ceredo said, no, we're going to stand up for what we believe to be right. Ceredo would be host to a Northern Infantry unit in 1861 when the Civil War breaks out. Unfortunately for the town of Ceredo, its economic prospects take a huge hit about 4 years after its founding, and we can learn more about that in another video. So I hope you enjoyed this little brief overview of the history of Ceredo. I hope you're staying safe, and I cannot wait until all of this pandemic stuff is over and we can get back to going to our museums, our historical homes, and all of the other great places that we have in our communities. Take care. Goodbye.